Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Let's call this show Insights to the Tennis World with our tennis pro, John Riggio, back joining us here today to talk more about his amazing career and the impact he's had on professional tennis and continues to do so today. How are you doing, darling?
Great. Hi, Jill. How's everything there?
It's going great, sweetheart. Beautiful day here as it is in New Jersey, right, for you? So sun came out today, warmed up again. Beautiful day to play some tennis. Good segue. Yeah, Tell us some more. For those new time listeners, John has an amazing career, more than one. Tell us a little bit about yourself, John.
Yes, a lot of times I talk about my professional architect career, but I also have stories from the past when I was a professional tennis player. And recently I've been talking about some experiences that were going on at my tennis center that they built for me at Alley Pond. That's located in New York City, in Queens. It's still there. They still have tennis courts and a building. And there were some very interesting stories that came from Alley Pond in such a short time. And some of the story really is very interesting. One of them was there was a player that I played a match of tennis against. They sent him over to me at Alley Pond, and he was a very good tennis player. The first match, I was able to beat him, and he was sort of telling me that he doesn't like his tennis rackets. He thinks that they aren't really good for him. And he saw that I had a pretty good tennis racket, and he was pretty smart. I mean, he knew that those tennis rackets that they were selling at the National Tennis Center that were cheat rackets were not allowed. He knew that they were cheat rackets, they were illegal, and if he got caught with them, they'd give him a big problem. So he looked at my racket, he knew it was a legal racket, and he was saying, what kind of racket do I have? So when I told him about the Babolat Pro Stock racket that I had, he said that he had a pro shop. He went over to the pro shop, and he bought one of those Babolat rackets. It wasn't a cheaper racket. It wasn't inexpensive. It was somewhere between $1,200 and $1,400, and the kind of thing. And then he bought that tennis racket, and then he asked to come back to play me. So he just played a match. He wanted to try this racket. He was playing so much better. He beat me in the match. So he's doing much better. Then after that, maybe a week or two later, I'm playing a tournament. He's doing very good in tournament. He's winning matches. He comes back to play me. We play a match. I win the match. But he's playing much better with this racket. And this racket, he's a really good player. I'm remembering his name. I think it was Mark Schumacher. And he continued in tennis playing. I played him again at Sutton East, maybe 2 years later, a year and a half later, something like that. He's playing pretty good. I played him 1, 2, 3 matches. I forget how many matches. He won one of the matches. He's doing very good. I don't lose too many matches. He's playing with that same Babolat racket. The kid, he was about the same height as me. He looks similar to me. Same kind of hair color. So he wasn't that different a player. He's playing excellent. He's playing in the top tournaments. So he was already starting to play in those top tournaments, leading up to the best tournaments with the American Airlines, the Manhattan Open, the Eastern, all those other tournaments that we were playing there with Chicago, Dallas, Miami, all those different, Nashville, Tennessee, all those different things. And so he was in that group playing the best tournaments. So he was playing very good. And I think, I don't remember if I played him again after that. I might have played him again years later after that, going through Perot and the team with Japan. But what happened was the strangest thing. I was just remembering the horrible story was really, I think it was somewhere around 1992, that I drove home, I think it was like near the end of college, and they were saying that they thought I died, that someone had shot and killed me. And so I was very strange. I was wondering how is that possible? So then someone in the neighborhood came up and told me, he said, do you have any tattoos? I say, no, I don't have any tattoos. And I said, why are you asking? He said, because someone died, looked just like me that had tattoos. And I said, no, so if someone has tattoos, how can I have died? I didn't understand what he's talking about. And then,
Yeah.
in fact, he told me some other very interesting things. It took me a while to really remember what happened. He told me the name of the person who died, and he was saying it was Mark Schumacher.
Wow.
And he said that someone somehow had put together somehow that I knew him playing tennis. So when I'm talking at home, my mind isn't thinking about pro tennis. I'm thinking
Yeah.
about college class. I'm thinking about going home. I'm not thinking about tennis. I'm thinking, I don't know who that is. I didn't really remember him that well. I had to think about it. But now that I'm putting it together, unfortunately, they said that that particular player might have been this person who had died. So that was really horrible.
Wow.
He was a nice kid, excellent playing tennis. He was doing really good. I don't think he's originally from the area. I'm not sure where he was originally from, but
Okay.
he seems to have been that player. And that was the strangest thing. So I think when they first thought about him looking similar to me and he was playing tennis, it was very interesting that somehow that was really me. But I think, but then even just at the time, thinking about how he has a different name, he's someone else, has a couple tattoos on him. Obviously, it's not me, it's someone else.
Yeah.
This other player that was playing there. And I don't know what his age was. I don't know if he's a little bit older or a little bit younger than me. I'm not really too certain about him. But yeah, so he was around playing at that time. And unfortunately, there was something that really happened there.
Wow.
And so that is another very interesting story that happened coming out of there. I don't know if I even played him as a junior player. I have to think if I had played him before the junior player. But I think one thing about him was the turning point when his racket really wasn't that good. And then he was interested to get the good legal racket, and he put together this thing of getting the same Babolat racket. He seems like his tennis career became very stable for him. He was playing a little better, and a little better made a difference with him really moving up through playing the tennis, and he was on to playing the tour matches and things like that. So he was doing really good, and that's really his story. I don't know too much about his sponsors, how he was getting around playing and things like that, but that was one very interesting thing about him. And so that is a very interesting story. It also grew out of that time. And so I think that is one thing that happened. So I think another interesting story in tennis, there was really something that really affected me, and I think something that was locally happening because locally here in New York City area, they have the U.S. Open.
Yes.
So, now the U.S. Open, it isn't really a highly ranked tournament. It's very corrupt, it's exclusions, so a lot of people don't play in it and everything. But I think what happened was when I was young as a junior player, this whole thing with the U.S. Open was sort of already starting to happen where that was like a little problem. And since we lived near there, had played with people coming right through the National Tennis Center, it caused a problem. So I think one interesting story, don't want to say anything bad about anybody, but what happened was when I was playing and just made the pros and they gave me my player name, my coach was telling me, as a pro, he was telling me to watch the other pro players in the area. One was Azar, and the other player they had was Andre Agassi.
Ah.
And so where I lived, I was going to the mall. I was going to the mall. I was young. This whole thing just started with making the pro contract and everything. And he told me to observe, the other players in public, how they act. So unfortunately, I didn't want to really say it, but I think I saw Agassi in the mall, and he was for some reason wearing female high heels in the mall. I don't know what was going on.
Publicity stunt? Maybe.
Yeah, it's embarrassing to say, but I didn't know what was going on with what was happening.
That is bizarre. I was not expecting to hear that. Okay.
So I think, and then I think with that, then I saw him just fall down on the floor too. It was just like someone pushed him from behind me, fell on the floor. I don't know what had happened there. So I think, unfortunately, with that is this thing with at that point as a junior player, Andre Agassi was causing a problem for a lot of players. It wasn't just me. Unfortunately, my coach showed me this list of pro players, and in the next few months, he shows me the list, and it shows that Agassi's contract is canceled, and it's told me he's canceled for cheating. So this whole thing with the U.S. Open coming up was very strange because he wasn't really has official contract to play, and the usual problem was if someone plays and he's not doesn't have a contract, he can have a very serious problem. The police can come, make him pay a fine of $300,000, but somehow they were able to keep him playing in the tennis center as sort of like some kind of a show of some kind. So at that point, all he could do is play amateur tennis. And so what happened as a junior going into the U.S. Open, they didn't want me to play. My coach says they changed their mind. I'm not allowed to play the final in the U.S. Open. But what I know from playing as a junior, some of the other players were already excellent tennis players. So if I don't win it, someone else is going to win it. And at that time, I was really ranked number one. Some of the other players, they had told me I was number one player. But with the U.S. Open isn't really the center point of people playing tennis. It's really just an ordinary tournament. Sort of has a lot of corrupted things about it, very, what you would say, exclusionary. Like it's an exclusive tournament that they just sort of doing on their own. So unfortunately, I didn't want to say this story, but I think locally they were showing Agassi winning the U.S. Open as a junior, but in fact there was another player in the group that I was told really did win the U.S. Open, and he had to go to court against the sponsors of Andre Agassi. He won the court case, and it's the usual thing that in theory he's not supposed to publicly say he won the U.S. Open anymore. That is really what's going on crazy in tennis. So I think that sort of affected my career, and so that is what happened. And I think I played Andre Agassi years later with Perot, and he told me the same thing. He never was able to restart his contract. It was still canceled through all those years. So somehow he was able to play on a show of his own, and that's really what was happening there, which is very interesting. And so I think if someone plays as an amateur, has his own television, I guess it isn't really illegal to do that, but I think the whole thing is all the things about how they interact with the pro players, the official pro games, if they could really have a problem getting fined. I've heard of players getting fined $300,000 when they just didn't have their contract renewed. If they get caught not having their contract renewed, they could get fined so much money. Police can come and they give them a written letter that they have to really pay a fine of $300,000.
Oh my goodness!
It never happened to me. I never had that problem.
Oh, thank goodness! We might not be here today.
So I think that is one very interesting thing that was happening, and so I think just as when I was younger, that whole controversy was taking place. I think the other young pro players, they didn't have any problem.
No.
They pretty much were okay. I think there aren't that many players that were really junior players and they continued on as adult players for some reason. I was one of the players that was able to play as a junior and as adult player. And I think I had told those stories about when my contract, if it was somehow stopped, had to get renewed and there was a delay in time, there was always a big thing about why it isn't getting renewed. There's no reason why that was happening. And I think so that was very interesting. I think some things I could point out about something like that is going all the way to the end of my tennis playing was when Reebok from Britain they were in control of trying to get me on the court.
Yeah.
And I was talking them on the phone. We were talking direct from me, from where I was living in an apartment, all the way to them in Britain. I was talking to them on the phone. They were trying to arrange matches from Britain all the way over to the National Tennis Center.
Wow.
And I think they got a few people to come out to play, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to play the full match with them. And the reason is they said they're not allowed to play me. They said there's some problem with the sponsor that I have that is not able to connect to get me to where I can start playing those matches again.
Wow.
And so I talked to the representative from Reebok. He was apologizing to me. He said he's very sorry. He sort of felt that they were shorting, the career for me. They knew I had a few, maybe 3 or 5 years left of playing, and so they apologized to me. And then very interesting, it came out also that the ATP isn't owned by people in the United States of America. It's owned by people in the United Arab Emirates, which is a very interesting fact that they don't talk about. I don't know if it's still owned. But he said it was owned by people there. So that was very interesting. And even though they told me the information, that does not going to help me really. As far as a player, I can't really put anything together. But that was always a very interesting fact. I think one thing about that is when Robert Kraft was involved with my playing, he was able to make a new tennis league so I could play in a new professional tennis league. And of course, Robert Kraft's right here in America, and that tennis league was so popular with the other players because it was playing the top players, the top 250 players, playing in those tournaments very similar to the ones I had said, like the American Airlines, Manhattan, Eastern, then comparable to the ones like in Europe. We have the London Queens, the Paris Berck, Roland Garros, and the Lisbon Portugal. Were really the top tournaments. And I think, unfortunately, the ATP insisted on coming over and saying that they wanted to buy his league.
Wow.
And were able to buy his league. I don't know what happened. I remember at that time, Robert Kraft, in fact, and my sponsors, they looked at a feasibility to buy the ATP altogether, and it was a reality, but it wasn't eligible to get bought. They couldn't buy it for some reason, and I think years later, it turns out it wasn't really owned in the USA. I had no idea who really owned the ATP at the time, but years later, talking with Reebok from Britain, they knew who really owned the ATP. And that was really some interesting information. That was so the league that Robert Kraft set up where I was playing in, and it was really competitive league. It was really excellent to play. They had to dissolve it, and it was bought over by the ATP. So we were back playing with the ATP. I don't know if they ever really put in writing any guarantee that I would get to continue play tennis continuously or anything like that. It seems like I sort of had the feeling that they were buying it over. Then they want to put everyone down, sort of get a good time to stop me from playing and maybe some other players. There was a lot of players like me, like say, even like I'm talking about Mark Schumacher, who was an excellent player playing in those upper tournaments. And then they could just stop their career. So that was one very interesting thing going on with tennis. I think that was really amazing. And so that was some amazing, interesting information. And I think let's see, I have another story. I don't know if we have time for it.
Yeah, go ahead. We got 6 minutes.
Just to continue on all these amazing stories that's going on, I could fit another little story in. One of them was to continue on with that, with the ATP and how they think and things like that. Was I'd originally said a story about someone who was claiming to be an employee of the ATP, came over and talked to my sponsor over there at Sutton East, which is Gloria Vanderbilt. Oh. And this person was really a female. She wasn't a very old lady. She was only like maybe 30 years old. And she went over there and she was saying crazy things, that she's really a god. she told me she took $4 million out of the payments and went crazy spending it. So I think after she went crazy spending it, she must have thought she was a god at that time because she went crazy. No one did anything to stop her. And I think she was saying how, she has like a fancy car and everything, and she was able to buy whatever she wants. Then she went over and she threatened to kill Gloria Vanderbilt. I mean, this is unbelievable. So they had to arrest her. And it didn't get any better. Unfortunately, this person who really said they worked for the ATP and was taking money from the players, like a player would give $20,000 to play a match, they would just put it in their pocket. Wow. And it never went to anyone. It's because I think you hear about tennis players just like living homeless, and she took all the money, put it in her pocket, obviously didn't pay any taxes, and then she was arrested. I think she finally met Gloria Vanderbilt, did not knowing that she was going to really get her arrested and put in prison for a while. Then when she got out, she went back and tried to shoot Miss Gloria Vanderbilt with a gun.
Oh my gosh.
And I think she was not aware that Miss Gloria Vanderbilt had 2 security guards, and the 2 security guards immediately stopped her, and the police arrested her, and they had a whole court case. It wasn't in the newspapers, but they had a whole court case. They had to have Miss Gloria Vanderbilt had to go to the courtroom, and the defendant there, she claimed that she was taking the drug PCP. That's why she went crazy. So, but it didn't work. So she was sentenced to 5 years in prison, and she was put in prison. And I heard, I'm not 100% if it really happened, but I heard that she, in fact, committed suicide in prison. So that's what really, she's no longer alive, according to what happened. So that is really like unbelievable what's going on. And this has to do with, that's why when we're doing things with the ATP, continuing just like very simple contract to continue working. And I think one sad thing about this also is before that, I had to go to the court on my own. And I talked to the judge, and the judge, in fact, since I was considered a minor, called me on the phone. And that's what he was saying also, that those people, they were considering themselves a higher life form, that they were really like a god. And unfortunately, when this thing unraveled, that the lady from the ATP was really just lying. She was really on drugs, spending money, stealing it from the ATP. She really was really just saying she's a god, like she went crazy and no one could stop her, so she must be like a god. That's what she was getting at. And when they were saying that they were god, most people would take that they're trying to tell them that they're really like existential, that they're not really just like ordinary humans. So, but that isn't really what was happening. They were just going wild with stealing money, drugs, going around threatening people, trying to also give awards to players they like. It was revolved. One player was being given like Player of the Year, but his coach and himself, they never applied for it. In fact, the player wasn't even actively playing tennis. So unfortunately, if they took that listing and they put it in Tennis Magazine, it was becoming absurd. I mean, I couldn't believe it. They even had to rescind some of those things that they gave away that were really just a joke of someone who was going wild. I mean, that was really unbelievable. So this was amazing stories. I think those stories, like particularly at that point with Miss Gloria Vanderbilt, they weren't in the news. They kept them quiet. I think a lot of court cases with tennis are really kept very quiet. It has to do with something very special with sport industries. They seem to keep them out of the news. I think if you read the newspaper, only some things are put in the newspaper about different things. Sometimes it comes out when you read like the contract list, things like that something's happening. And that was really unbelievable. I mean, it took me a while to really just memorize all those details, but I think that is just about it with that. And so I think that's really one interesting thing. And then I think later on piecing together that the ATP wasn't really owned by anyone in the U.S. It was owned all the way far away place. And that's about it. I don't know what the story is with that. That was just very interesting.
They all are. Thank you for enlightening us as always. John Riggio, we got to wrap it up. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think those are some wild stories that I'm telling you about. I think the starting off the story with Mark Schumacher was originally a very nice story. He's an excellent player. He had a really good mind, didn't want to cheat, and I proved that he was able to really succeed. He was playing really good and went to play those top tournaments. They told me that story that something happened to him. In fact, I never 100% verified it with anyone or read it in the newspaper, which was maybe I needed to take a copy of what happened at that time. But and then the other things were really just controversial stories happening in sports that you really have to watch for, and it's really that's why you really. I was lucky to have some really good sponsors that can handle those type of problems. They could really go after them, because I think particularly like the lady in the ATP, she's obviously going wild, telling me that she's is going wild, spending money and stealing the money and then going around threatening people. No. So I think it was really unbelievable.
All right, John, thank you for being here. JohnRiggio.com. Join him, say hello, and we will chat again soon. Always interesting speaking with you. And it's RIGGIO.com, JohnRiggio.com. Thank you so much for being here. Have a great day.
Okay, welcome, Joe. Thank you, bye.
Hello, my name is John Riggio. I'm the CEO of John Riggio, R.A. Architect, LLC. I provide architect services in the New York City metropolitan area. That includes New York City, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. My areas are specifically Long Island, the 5 boroughs of New York City, Westchester, Yonkers. In New Jersey, it is North Jersey, Central Jersey, and South Jersey. In Philadelphia, the areas are the Philadelphia metropolitan area. You can find out more information about my company at www.johnriggio.com. That's spelled JohnRiggio.com. And there you will find out a description of my work. It shows a portfolio, pictures of the different job types. And I also have my contact information there. It shows my business address. From there, you can contact me and we can discuss your project. First, we will make an initial consultation. And then from there, we will then go over designing your project and then constructing your project. So I hope to hear from you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becca. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad, just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.